know, this is a journey that we've been taking for the last couple of years, which has been a development from our previous purpose, I suppose, for the last 100 years. So we're particularly happy to welcome so many of you today who work in the community development and recreation areas of both local government and community agencies. Because if there's one thing we've learnt over the last couple of years, that this project, Play Streets, is about community development. So we're really excited that you're here today. I also want to give a special welcome to our members, and we also have most of our national board members with us today, which is really terrific. 1000 Play Streets is the name given to the movement initiated by Play Australia to reconnect communities to encourage more play for children on our quiet residential streets. This is more important than ever before, given the need to look forward and start planning for our COVID recovery. This movement has been very strongly inspired by our global neighbours at Playing Out in the UK. And I want to give a special shout out to our friends Alice and Ingrid in Bristol. Not that they'll be with us, but they will listen to the recording later. We also want to acknowledge that we didn't begin playing in the streets, because we know that many families have been doing this for years across the country. But what we are committed to doing is to getting every child to play outside every day, and 1000 Play Streets is a key part of this campaign. The project began before COVID began, and therefore it's gone on for much longer than we initially planned. And today we will share some insights from our national pilots with local governments and communities across WA, South Australia, Queensland and Victoria. We will also share with you our new resources for Australian local governments, including our free national toolkit, which provides guidance to policymakers who are seeking to open quiet residential streets for play. And so it gives me great pleasure to welcome our own Kieran Brophy and Gavin Fairbrother, both of Play Australia, and our standout academic friend, Dr. Erica Randall of La Trobe University, who's going to lead the discussion today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the three of them and then hand over to Kieran, and we'll get on with the purpose of today. Kieran joined Play Australia to lead this project, having worked at Sport Australia, Vic Health and the Health Department in Victoria previously. Gavin joined us shortly after in South Australia, having been the developer of the Opal Street Play project in Campbelltown, SA. And this, I have to say, has been one of the absolute inspirations and standout performances of our work, and we absolutely love working with Gav. And then, of course, he worked in Wellbeing SA for some time. And lastly, Erica, who is our very favourite academic, who's passionate about enabling everyone to play. And she's a research fellow in the Centre for Sport and Social Impact at La Trobe University. So over to you, Kieran, and the rest is yours.
Thanks, Barb. I'll just share my screen. And Barb, please tell me you can see that.
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So look, I'll start out with an acknowledgement of country. I'd like to recognise the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome everyone to our 1000 Play Streets Toolkit launch for Australian local government, but it's also for any other interested parties as well. We know that there are lots of community partners out there who are interested in this movement. As Barb stated, I'm Kieran, I'm Assistant Director at Play Australia and have been working on Play Streets for the last couple of years. And this toolkit, it's all about supporting local government to run temporary street closures for play. And ultimately what we want to do is we want to have a big conversation in terms of how we all work together to create more livable streets. It's really important to acknowledge all our partners who've been involved in our work over the last couple of years. First and foremost, the communities who have been involved in our pilots, They made wonderful contributions and were really open to talking about their experiences. So we want to recognise and thank them. We also want to thank our funding partners, being Sport Australia, supporting us under the Move It Oz participation grants to test in Queensland, Victoria and WA. And we also want to recognise Office for Recreation, Sport and Racing, the Government of SA, under their Game On initiative, allowed us to test in South Australia with multicultural communities. We've got a terrific evaluation partner in La Trobe University and Erica. We've worked with some wonderful community partners as well, being Multicultural Communities, Council SA. Co-Design Studio have been a great partner. They've been our state lead in Victoria and Queensland, and they have a history of working in play streets. They supported play streets about 3 years ago with Vic Health around Kensington and developed up their own toolkit for communities to use. So we've learned a great deal from them. Our state lead over in WA, Nature Play Solutions, they are wonderful to work with. Hi, Emma, if you're out there. And as Barb said, we've been very much inspired by the work that Playing Out's done for 10 plus years. They've scaled their movement to 1,000 streets around the UK, 200 in Bristol alone, and they've had some massive wins in terms of shifting legislation and shifting policy toward opening more streets for play. And as an example, Bristol City Council, they support their communities with an annual permit to run street play. So if you think about all that red tape and hoop jumping, they only ask their communities to go through it once, and then they're good to go for the year. We've also worked with some terrific local governments, being Sunshine Coast. So hi Megan and Shana. Up in Queensland, we've got Moreland. We had a great relationship working with Alyssa and the team there. Darebin City Council, we've thoroughly enjoyed working with Jackie, Michelle and Adele. Tracy and Danielle at Campbelltown City Council, Kate at City of Vincent, and Margaret and Renee at City of South Perth. It's been we've just had a wonderful team, and it's been a great experience working with all these different people. So 1,000 Play Streets is our movement to support Australians to reclaim their quiet residential streets as places to connect and play. And it's a movement for Australians of all ages. We want to connect with neighbours of all ages. And we recognise the importance of this intervention in the context of COVID recovery, particularly as we look toward 2022. I'm coming to you from Melbourne, and we've been in lockdown for a while. We're in lockdown for another 3 weeks, and I've got a lot of friends in Sydney who are doing it tough at the moment, and in broader New South Wales. We know that the kids don't play outside as much as they used to. We know that roaming ranges are gradually shrinking, and again through COVID, we're also being given advice to stay inside, and it's a scary time for many, and particularly for our children. So we've got a really big job ahead of us to preserve children's play outside and support our children to play outside. So under 1,000 Play Streets, we see a great opportunity to challenge car culture and build play culture instead, recognising that streets are for people and not cars. And we also want to give our parents more confidence, our parents, caregivers, grandparents, anyone who looks after children. We want to give them more confidence to take children out to play on the street, and particularly for those families who don't have access to a beautiful big backyard or a park in their road. These are the families that really need to look at the other spaces and looking at play provision. We need to provide places for children to play outside every single day to really drive home that holistic development. And when we talk about holistic health development for play, we know that there's plenty of physical benefit, there's plenty of cognitive benefit. Children learn through play, social and emotional benefit. So children build confidence through playing. And we've had some children in our pilot whereby it's the first time they've actually played on the street. And so that's been really important to connect with those children and see their confidence grow. What's been the big standout is the social domain. So the social domain has really shone through in our 1,000 Play Streets trials. So we're seeing children connecting with children connecting with adults and neighbours, and adults connecting as well, which is wonderful to see. We also recognise that our communities are isolated, and now more than ever we need to support their mental wellbeing. I think the Australian Psychological Society do a fantastic job in pulling a lot of the data together, and it's well worth a look. Their website, they run the loneliness report, and they report that in 2018 they reported 1 in 3 people have no neighbours they see or hear from on a monthly basis, which is kind of staggering. And nearly 1 in 2 people have no neighbours they can call on for help. And COVID's only exacerbated this issue, and Play Streets can play a real role to help connect these communities who are in need. The other point I want to make is that we want to push for healthy systems that value people, so that put community, including children, at the centre of decision making. And so the local governments we worked with, we were asking the question, well, how can we make it as easy as possible for communities to get involved in street play? And part of that is unpacking the system and understanding that a system, there's people, there's legislation, there's policy, there's process, and there's lots more. And we can tweak and shift and advocate to improve the system to open streets for play. And that's what we're trying to do here. So in thinking about local government, you might have the most motivated of local people in your community who wants to run street play. However, often you'll find that the permit process for them to get to that point where they open the street for their neighbours, there's a lot of red tape they need to work through, and it can really be crippling for even the most motivated of people. And what we found through the last 2 years, the red tape's actually increased because we've now got COVID-19 management. So we really need to work together to make it easier for our communities. So Barb and I, 2 years ago, we sat around the whiteboard and sort of said, look, how can Play Australia build value, and how can we support local government to open streets for play and support communities? And we really felt that there was a need to build a brand. Calling it 1000 Play Streets provides a bit of a vision as well. We wanted to support learning through testing and connecting networks. And we also wanted to build knowledge and translate in the form of our 1000 Play Streets toolkit that we have now. So that's sort of the nuts and bolts of 1000 Play Streets. However, we see an opportunity for us to increase advocacy. So advocacy to improve internal systems within local government and external systems as well, i.e. state legislation. So thanks to our funding partners, we were able to test. So we tested from September 19 to April 2021, 23 Play Streets across 15 locations. Some of those locations ran multiple Play Streets. We had those 6 local governments involved across the 4 states. And we involved a heap of different people, children and adults. And I couldn't be more grateful to our 37 Play Street hosts who got on board as well. And we worked with our local government partners, community partners and communities through COVID, which at times it felt like it was 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. But in hindsight, I guess the silver lining has been that we've been able to spend a little bit more time on developing up the resources, and we feel like we've got a really quality resource at the end of the day. And we're so lucky to have a great evaluation partner in Centre for Sport and Social Impact, and particularly Erica, who's been a bit of a research ninja. And I want to thank Erica because it's so difficult to run data collection through a pandemic, and she's done an amazing job. Erica, that's you.
Thanks, Kieran. Thanks. Well, I obviously would like to start by acknowledging the Boonwurrung people, who's the traditional custodians of the beautiful land that I'm on this morning. Pay my respects to elders past and present. I will acknowledge the rest of our team. So it was a team effort, definitely. We had Lauren Thorne early in our team, and Matthew Nicholson as well that were part of the research. But essentially, the Centre for Sport and Social Impact is a research centre at La Trobe University. We work in the areas of sport, physical activity, active recreation. We work predominantly with government and industry to solve real world issues. So I guess working with Play Oz on this Play Streets was right up our alley, particularly because we know that play is important for children developing physical literacy and going on to lead more active lives. So what were we asked to do? Well, essentially, Barb and Kieran, after their whiteboard episode, asked us to support the Play Street pilot by gathering the evidence that they needed to develop the toolkit, and also the evidence that would best garner support for the Play Street movement moving forward. So for us, this was really about, I guess, capturing the process of organising a Play Street and the stories and outcomes from each activation. So the research. So what our team did, really our approach was to immerse ourselves in the Play Street process for the 2 years. So it obviously was a bit extended with COVID, but we sat in on meetings, we gathered written evidence, we conducted interviews, all of this looking at the support and actions required to organise a Play Street, and also highlighting the challenges that everybody experienced and how these were overcome. We collected participant data from the Play Street activations, and we captured a lot of the stories through interviews and some site visits. During the 2 years, we also talked a lot with the Play Street team in Barb, Kieran and Gavin, the state leads and other partner organisations like Playing Out in the UK. The research really around all of the pilot was really collaborative, and as Kieran has already said, it was a really, really great team. So all of this evidence, along with the many other examples of Play Street gatherings that have been held around Australia and across the globe before, have all been used to support the development of the toolkit and the other Play Street resources. So we'll go into what we found. This is the exciting stuff. And these were the overall top 3 findings. And there's a Wordle. Everybody loves a Wordle. That shows what attendees thought about the Play Streets. So those really big words were the ones that were most often mentioned. So fun, social, community. And that really is what we found. Firstly, Play Streets builds play and physical activity in communities. They did this by providing an opportunity for play and physical activity on the day, and by building the confidence of parents and neighbours that play on quiet residential streets was possible. What we saw was that neighbourhoods giving it a go during a Play Street, they were then more likely to support children to keep playing outside after the activation. The second main finding was that Play Streets connects people, and that was so important to ongoing play and physical activity. For parents particularly, social connection was tied really closely with safety. Parents wanted to know their neighbours. They wanted their children to know their neighbours. They thought that it would create a safer, more connected, more trusting community for their children to grow up and play in, and they did this through Play Streets. What was really, really, really great to see was, as Kieran's already hinted at, was the stories of older adults living alone who may have been isolated before, but now through a Play Street met all of their neighbours who they'd never met before and developed a strong local support network, which I know is really important at any time, but really was really important during the current pandemic. And this final finding was one that Gavin will really hone on later on in his presentation, but it relates to the process of growing the Play Street movement and highlighting that it starts with valuing people, all the people involved. So LGA organisers really connected with the people in their community. They built their trust and they valued their input. It was also about valuing the LGA employees from different departments, bringing them all together and making sure that their input and ideas were heard and valued, made for a smoother process, particularly when getting through some of that red tape. So we're going to go through the stats now. So for the people that like the stats, we do have a couple that will really stand out. Firstly, 100% of people with children who were surveyed were now more likely to support their child to play outside more regularly with their neighbours. And that really came back to that social connections made during the Play Street and the realisation that play was possible and safe. Play Streets also strengthen people's belief that children should be able to play regularly on quiet residential streets. 38% of those with children strengthened their view in this area. And this may seem low, but actually most of those other people, so the other 62%, already had quite strong beliefs in this area. But also 50% of those without children increased their support for play on streets. And this again was really pleasing to see that all throughout the pilot, Play Streets was a place for the whole neighbourhood, those with children and those without. And the wellbeing and social connection piece. We will keep going on about the social connection piece because it was really clear and it was a really valuable outcome that underpinned all of the others. So 90% of surveyed respondents felt more confident to talk to their neighbours as a result of going to a Play Street, and 33% reported mental health benefits. There was really no doubt that Play Streets created stronger local support networks. So now we're going to go through into some of the process outcomes. A neighbourhood needed 4 C's to deliver a Play Street. We tried to make it memorable. So there were 4 C's. They needed commitment, connection, capacity, and confidence. As the neighbourhood went through the Play Street process, they also developed these 4 C's. So at the start of the pilot, some neighbourhoods may have been quite low in these areas, but by the end they had moved a bit more along this continuum. The further that they moved along the continuum, the better long-term sustainable play outcomes were. And I'm going to go through each of the 4 C's in a minute. But firstly, I want to explain why it is that we think that LGAs need to understand where their targeted Play Street community sits on this continuum, why that's important. So the LGA approaches. What we found was that LGAs tended to take one of these 3 approaches, depending on the level of commitment, connection, capacity, and confidence of the neighbourhoods that they wanted to work with. Essentially, if the neighbourhood was low across these 4 areas, then the LGA input needed to be high. And so the Play Street was really LGA led. Conversely, if the neighbourhood was high across these 4 areas, then the LGA input required was much less. I'll go over the 3 approaches briefly. So the first is the LGA-led Play Street. This approach was used for targeted communities or locations where neighbourhoods could be lower on the continuum. It doesn't mean that the community weren't empowered or consulted. They very much were. So it doesn't mean that they're not involved. It just meant that it required a higher level of LGA resources and time, because in practice, what it looked like was the LGA representative really driving and planning the Play Street and then allocating out the roles and responsibilities to people in the neighbourhood. This approach was definitely the most resource intensive, but it was also where we saw the greatest impact. So people in these neighbourhoods who attended a Play Street saw the greatest increases in connection, in play, and in physical activity. The middle approach was to have the LGA support a Play Street. This happened where the LGA already had a simple process for closing streets for neighbourhood get-togethers. So a neighbourhood representative or a team with the commitment, capacity and confidence could easily complete a short permit application and then organise the Play Street themselves, and they were connected enough in their neighbourhood to let everybody know about it and get them to turn up. The great outcome for these Play Street neighbourhoods was that for very little LGA input, they were able to run an LGA supported Play Street, and then they were more likely to go on and organise future street get-togethers without involving the LGA at all. And that really was the third approach. So where the neighbourhood had a very high level of commitment, capacity, confidence and connection, they didn't even get the LGA involved. They just ran the Play Street themselves. So hopefully you can see why it's important for the LGA to think early on about what approach they have the resources and capacity to commit to a Play Street, what type of neighbourhood they want to target, and where that neighbourhood sits on this continuum of 4 Cs. So I will go through each of the 4 Cs now briefly. Commitment. Commitment is about how much the neighbourhood wanted to run a Play Street. In general, if there was no interest or commitment, then don't choose that neighbourhood. It would be too much work for the LGA. You want at least one person to say, this sounds like a great idea, and that they would like to help. More often than not, this was a parent that was motivated to create a safer community for their child. What we did find is that having a small group of 3 to 5 Play Street hosts meant that it was a more enjoyable experience than if there was just one of them. It was also more likely to lead to more sustainable outcomes because through the initial Play Street process, the group became more connected, developed capacity within themselves, and in doing it together, they created some momentum and some confidence to keep going with more Play Streets after the first one. In neighbourhoods where there was only 1 or 2 hosts driving the Play Street, they benefited from being connected to other hosts from other neighbourhoods. So one LGA set up a Play Street host working group, and that was really great because it took some of the pressure off the LGA and the hosts were able to share the experience with each other in that area. The second C is connection. The more connected a neighbourhood was, the more likely they were to support Play Streets. In less connected neighbourhoods, Play Street hosts could be really nervous about organising one. This is because they were somewhat fearful about going up to their neighbours that they had lived next door to for years, but they may have never met and they may have never talked to them, and then suddenly just inviting them out to play, or at the very least trying to get them to support a street closure for play. This interaction, particularly trying to get that support if they didn't have kids themselves, this interaction could be really daunting. So if you are an LGA working in a neighbourhood with low connection, then go out and help the host to door knock. The neighbourhoods we interviewed explained that having an LGA presence gave the Play Street legitimacy and helped them develop connection and confidence with their neighbours. In this way, connection also really related to the Play Street host and the neighbourhood relationship with their LGA. And it highlighted the importance of the LGA representative building trust with the neighbourhood. The third C is capacity. Capacity is about what tasks the neighbourhood community could realistically be expected to do to organise a play street based on the time that they had, the know-how, or the guidance that they had to get things done. In reality, no neighbourhood has the capacity to do traffic management plans and organise public liability insurance. Tasks that they could do, however, if they had the capacity, were marketing, letterbox drops, applying for permits, planning and organising activities, and on the day of the play street, playing host. In some states, permit conditions required play street hosts to have formal accreditations or certificates like first aid. So through the play street process, an LGA could aim to develop a neighbourhood's capacity in these type of areas, with the hope that they could move along that continuum so that the next time they could plan and deliver a play street more independently. The best strategies to develop capacity were to work closely with the neighbourhood, guide them, empower them, and if you can, go through the co-design process. The final C is confidence. Confidence is extremely important. It underpins all the other areas. We know that confidence drives behaviour. The more confident you are, the more likely you are to do something. Play street hosts that had low confidence were boosted if they had somewhere to get help. This could be other hosts in their working group, either directly in their neighbourhood or other working hosts from other neighbourhoods, or if they had direct contact to an LGA representative. As we've highlighted, some hosts really lacked the confidence to go and talk to their neighbours about play streets, and some were worried that no one would turn up on the day, or if they did turn up, that they wouldn't talk to each other or actually play. This is where the neighbourhood connection was really important. The more connected the neighbourhood was, the less they feared this. And my final point on building the play street movement and improving the confidence, capacity, commitment and connection for all neighbourhoods is to share the stories. Share them with other neighbourhoods, share them with other play street hosts and share them with other LGAs. Sharing the experience, connecting and learning from each other was by far the most valuable outcome from the Play Street pilot. Some neighbourhoods created dedicated play Facebook groups to share their videos and photos and organise future play activities. Other neighbourhoods and LGAs shared photos and stories over email. And throughout the pilot, LGAs networked together through online meetings to share stories and ideas and overcome issues. By promoting all the Play Street stories on a broader scale, we can hopefully inspire other neighbourhoods and LGAs to take it up. And so in that light, we're now going to hear some great stories from Gavin and his experience from the Campbelltown in South Australia. Over to you, Gav.
Thanks, Erica. Great presentation, and hello, everyone. I'd like to start by acknowledging I'm presenting on the land of the Kaurna people and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I acknowledge the deep relationship of the Kaurna people to country and this ongoing connection. And for your interest, episode 3 of Back to Nature was a wonderful promotion of Kaurna country near Campbelltown, and check it out on ABC iView if you're interested. An important reminder for me is that children love playing outdoors and connecting face to face with their friends and family. But what's stopping them is a system that makes it easy to be indoors, in cars and on screens. And that's a system that's been created by adults. To change these systems, I'm reminded of a quote from Colin McDougall in a Supportive Environments for Physical Activity presentation. And he said, whatever system or model you create, really is the people who champion the cause. So my message to you today in the context of 1,000 Play Streets is go beyond compliance and build a network of influential, passionate people in your community and council. And this can be a catalyst for change in your local system that will make it easy for children, families and residents to be outdoors playing and connecting in and around their neighbourhood. Today I'll talk about a recent trial in Campbelltown in South Australia, and it's framed under the 3 main headings of the toolkit. That's getting ready, connecting and growing the good. This will give you a practical example to consider in developing an effective approach in your community and council. The 1,000 Play Street trial was delivered as part of Children Friendly Campbelltown. This has been a 10-year journey with momentum changing as policy, people and resources have changed. But a focus on children and families and a commitment to social inclusion has remained because it's embedded in the council's strategic plan. Tracy Johnston, who's the Manager for Community Services and Social Development, has been a key children's advocate during this time. Tim Gill was another significant influencer on Campbelltown. He delivered a powerful presentation to staff several years ago, and showed a street play video from playing out in the UK. It was certainly a very motivating presentation, and it convinced council to support play streets in Campbelltown. What's quite interesting in South Australia is that Tim Gill and Playing Out have also inspired creation of street meets in Charles Sturt Council and street gatherings in Onkaparinga Council. These are great initiatives, and I'd certainly like to thank their staff for being so open in sharing their key learnings. And as an aside, imagine 1,000 play streets as a catalyst for children-friendly infrastructure changes in our local neighbourhoods. And for inspiration, I'd certainly recommend you read Tim Gill's latest book, Urban Playground: How Children-Friendly Planning and Design Can Save Cities. So in getting ready for 1,000 play streets in Campbelltown, it was clear there was senior management support and it aligned to the strategic plan. Other tasks in getting ready included demographic and street layout analysis and assessing community and council readiness. What this identified is the very high percentage of multicultural families in Campbelltown, some neighbourhoods with a higher percentage than others, a number of very supportive preschools and primary schools, an interesting east-west divide in the council, with West Campbelltown less advantaged than East Campbelltown. There are lots of quiet local roads that are suitable for play streets, and already existing was a supportive collaborative culture within the council, and this included an efficient traffic management system that was already in place. When Play Australia received a grant from the Office for Recreation and Sport, it was decided that we wanted to build on these factors and develop a targeted approach, targeting multicultural communities in the less advantaged neighbourhoods of Campbelltown. Building relationships by going to the community rather than expecting them to come to council was really core to the targeted approach. And we used the opportunity to trial 4 relationship building methods. They were door knocking, a park gathering, promotion through existing key contacts of local schools, and a council Facebook promotion. Council staff met Vinod's family through door knocking, and they helped with neighbourhood engagement on their street. His children are on the photo left of screen. Their energy was absolutely contagious in getting neighbours excited about play streets. Danielle from council is at the back of the photo. Going the extra mile and participating in door knocking is a practical example of how councils can build confidence of play street hosts, because something as simple as door knocking can be intimidating for some. So Vinod and his family became play street hosts. Charmaine, who's pictured in the middle of the photo on the right of the screen, was also recruited. She responded through council Facebook promotion. She's actually a preschool director, outstanding community leader and outdoor play advocate in Campbelltown. She was quite proud to learn she led Australia's first preschool 1,000 play streets, and we're now working with other preschools whose interest has come from her advocacy. When the preschool play street was being planned, what really struck me was the main fear of staff was taking on more work. So it was important for council to communicate their support in making it easy and to have a system to actually achieve that as well, because many people are time poor. On the day I was talking to a Sri Lankan father who was absolutely loving it. I asked him about his favourite play memory as a child, and he said it was playing in the jungle in Sri Lanka. I thought, wow, what a diversity of childhood experiences we have in our multicultural communities. So the Campbelltown trial delivered 5 events on 2 streets. The man in the suit that you'll see, not really dressed for play streets, but he in fact is the Minister for Recreation and Sport in South Australia, and that's Corey Wingard. And he's also our Transport Minister. He's a great advocate for play streets. We'd love to use his energy and commitment as a catalyst for change in his transport portfolio. 4 play street events were held at Melville Grove in Hectorville, and this provided an opportunity for in-depth evaluation with Erica's great support, and we had a community survey. What was very obvious from the results, the experience was a very positive one for the Melville Grove community. There were significant increases in motivation, enjoyment and confidence to play outdoors and connection with neighbours. The Net Promoter Score of 90 was a strong indicator of community support for play streets. And given Australia's strong car culture, imagine if these sort of positive experiences could be used to build community support for children-friendly policies like slower speed limits on our local quiet roads. Tikawita was one of many wonderful stories to come out of Play Streets. Having her first baby in 2019, away from her Samoan family, was an isolating experience. Play Streets connected with her Samoan culture. She loved meeting her neighbours and made strong connections. Now when she walks with her son, everyone says hello and she checks on older neighbours who live alone. Sharing good news stories was part of the Campbelltown trial. A short video was produced and when released on Council Facebook, generated media interest from Channel 9 and ABC Radio. Campbelltown's Mayor Jill Whittaker spoke brilliantly and it was very authentic because it was based on the positive experience she had when she attended one of the Melville Grove events. If you get a chance to see the video, two of Council's elected members are in an adults versus children tug of war. Elected officials having fun, enjoying social connection through play, out of uniform, I think is one of the best ways to build political support for this movement. The Campbelltown Community Plan is one of 4 strategic plans of Council. Melville Grove was featured as a case study in this plan. The children on the street told us they created the world's longest hopscotch, and this is highlighted in the case study. Embedding play streets in children-friendly Campbelltown has included investing in a community development role that focuses on supporting children and families. There's also a budget to support costs of traffic management and support, public liability and advertising. Council sees this as a worthwhile investment in their community's wellbeing. So to summarise, I've highlighted beyond managing compliance, the best council approach focuses on building and supporting relationships within council and community. When you download and read the toolkit, think about how you can go the extra mile in a people-orientated approach, an approach that builds community and council capacity to make it easy for children and adults to play and connect in and around their street. And I can assure you it's much more fun than filling out risk management templates. So enjoy the journey and thanks very much for listening. Back to you, Karen.
Thanks for sharing, Gav. Wonderful stuff. I'm just going to reflect on our toolkit steps, get ready, connect and grow. So really quickly, if we reflect on get ready, this is about local government understanding purpose. So why are you undertaking 1,000 play streets and for what end? And as Erica mentioned, it's about thinking about, well, is it an LGA-led model or LGA-supported model that we're undertaking? And thinking about how you build the required supports across strategy and you canvas for that investment that's much needed to appoint staff. It's very difficult when staff are being asked to deliver on 1,000 play streets amongst their already chock-a-block role. And we love what City of Onkaparinga have done, and they've actually appointed a play streets project officer in Lisa Peters, which is wonderful, and that was made possible by Wellbeing SA. And that's fantastic to see. And the other part of Get Ready is obviously asking that question, how can we make it as easy as possible for our communities and working to improve that system to open streets for play. Connect is about building trust with communities. So trust takes time and it can be difficult to establish trust when we're looking at the space of a 12-month pilot. This is all about the long-term game. It's about connecting with hosts and neighbours and creating welcoming environments for play. And it's also about doing things like setting up tea and coffee. I recall, Gav, I remember we spoke about the importance of having some chairs and having tea and coffee set up because regardless of whether anyone actually went and used it, it was an important symbol to say that this is a place for connection and this is a place for all. So please come and be a part of it. And it's also about embedding sustainability. So when we think about that LGA spectrum of support, how do we ensure that communities actually drive this stuff themselves? It would be great if we got to a point where they didn't need local government assistance to get this thing happening. But in thinking about sustainability, it's really important that we don't burden our Play Street hosts and don't scare them off. So it's really thinking about how we drip feed that information carefully. Grow is about capturing the stories. So as Gav highlighted, the evaluation, the pics, the videos, and helping communities to grow the good. And whatever that means, if it's growing the play aspect or the connection aspect, or potentially it's something else. We love to see that the positive unintended outcomes that appear in the context of these trials. And it's also about growing system change. So internally within your local government and also externally together, what are the systems we can advocate for to improve conditions for our communities? So in thinking about the supports for local government that Play Australia has available, we've launched our new website. We've got the toolkit on the website, so please feel free to download that. It's got a bunch of videos to really bring the stories to life. There's evidence review. Also, we got Latrobe to complete an evidence review on the value of play streets to support the healthy development of children's physical literacy. So check that one out. That's terrific if we're looking for evidence to support action. There's planning templates, planning prompts, but please get on and take your time and really engage with the resource. We're also looking at running an online learning session next year. So we run our online learning series quarterly for our broader stakeholders and members. And what we want to do is we want to run a national network for local governments quarterly as part of our Play Today PD sessions. However, we normally have a presenter with our Play Today PD sessions. This will be us facilitating a discussion with local government in attendance or community partners who are interested. So it's really unpacking the issues that you're working through, and let's discuss it and let's connect with each other, because that's where all the value can spill. We've also developed up a campaign support pack that's available. So through the pilots, we've put together a bunch of signage. We've got metal A-frames with sliding inserts. We've got corflute posters. We've got flyers and other posters that are printable. And these can be tailored with your community pictures. So it's all about building relevance for communities. We've got social tiles that you can use as well. We can organise printing and shipping and all that sort of stuff and get your logo on our website as a campaign supporter. And we've also thought about how we support communities. And so our advice to communities, and we've got this advice on our website, is to connect with your local government and chat to them about play streets. However, we also want to help join the dots. And what we've done is we've set up a community interest register whereby we're capturing community member names and their contact information and which council do they live in. And so we can help join those dots as we work with our partners down the line. The other thing that's happening is that we're continuing to work in SA under Game On for 1,000 play streets. We've been funded through Office for Export and Racing. Game On is a cross-government initiative, so it encompasses Wellbeing SA as well. And Wellbeing SA are an important partner. They're already supporting City of Onkaparinga. And we've got a number of local governments who've signed up to work with us and scale play streets. This is about building networks, local government networks. This is about scaling play streets. And this is about looking at joint advocacy opportunities to improve systems for play. So we've got Charles Sturt, Campbelltown, Port Adelaide Enfield and Onkaparinga on board. We'd love to see more SA local governments joining us and joining the SA LGA network. It's great to have a state-based network because it means the conversation you can have is a lot more relevant in the context of your own legislation and political environment. We've also got Latrobe supporting with the evaluation on that one. We'd love to look at other state-based partnerships and semi-replicate what we're doing in SA to grow the movement. We love a Gav in every state. I'm working on the cloning machine, Gav. We're trying, and we'd love to open streets for play in the broadest possible sense. So temporary road closures are one way to do it. We'd love to pilot shared zoning to improve play outcomes for children. We'd love to look at signage. We'd love to look at unique partnerships. Actually, prior to coming to Play Australia, I spent 12 months with the Country Fire Authority, working in community safety and emergency management. And it really does strike me that the work that we're doing here to build connection and community resilience, it aligns so strongly with the agenda of emergency management and disaster resilience. So I'd love to see some partnerships in that space down the line as well. And we also want to grow the knowledge and build connections, build networks, facilitate advocacy, and look to empower communities to really get on board Play Streets. We're launching our Play Today campaign, which is our public-facing campaign that connects directly with parents and mums, dads, grandparents, caregivers, all those who look after children. And we want to really ramp up the promotion of Play Streets in the context of our Play Today campaign. So please download the toolkit. We'd love you as a supporter, and we encourage you to promote the movement across your social networks. The more we can get the word out about 1,000 Play Streets, the better. And look, that's the presentation done. My details are there. Please get in touch. We've got Gav's details up there as well. So if you're an SA, either a local government or a community partner, you can get in contact with Gav direct. And also, please subscribe to our e-news as well, so you can keep across any kinds of updates. And now is the time that we welcome questions. So please type away, and I will close down this presentation and open up the question box. All right, we're back. And look, while we're waiting for questions, just from me personally, it's been a rocky ride over the last 2 years with 1,000 Play Streets, and I've really appreciated the support from Barb and the board to really get this thing happening, and also I've really enjoyed working with Erica and Gav. They've been such a supportive team who do such amazing work. So feeling really fortunate in terms of the process and where we're at the moment. I'm really excited by what's next.
And Kieran, whilst you're looking at contributions and questions from other people, I need to say too, having been in my role for a very long time, that it does make me feel incredibly proud of our achievement. And I'm sure that the board would like to express similar views. I've already had a few messages from Ali Costa, our chair, saying how proud she is to be part of this terrific achievement. And you can see when you have a look at the material on the website that a heap of work has gone into this. We're also very fortunate in that we have a wonderful relationship with our designer, Brad Welsh, up in Wood End, who just seems to get the message. I mean, I'm just blown away by what he's done with the word toolkit. I think it's absolutely brilliant. So we do have a great team here, and everything that we do, we need to think about it from the point of view of sustainability and our size. And when we get resources from anywhere, we look at getting them out in the communities and into local government insofar as we can. So it is a very, very happy and proud day for me and for the board and for all of our members, I'm sure.
Fantastic, Barb. Thank you. Look, I'm just reading through some of the questions. Can we get access to the slides and the recording? We'll share it with everyone who's registered today. Just joining now, can we talk about how people got around the traffic management issues? This is an element that ultimately brings us undone a lot of the time. Gav, can I throw that one to you? Traffic management?
Yeah, certainly. I think in short, what we learnt from the trials, there's 3 different approaches that councils have adopted. One is very much council doing all the traffic management and support. And that's what we did in Campbelltown as a commitment to making it as easy as possible for our communities that lived in our less advantaged areas. The model that other councils have adopted is, and this has probably been the most common one, is the traffic management planning is done by council, but then they work with the Play Street hosts in suitably training them to support traffic management on the day of the event. And in South Australia, Lisa at Onkaparinga is certainly fantastic to talk to, with all the knowledge of how that works in her council, and they've got that working very efficiently. And then the last one is outsourcing all traffic management and support to a third party. Personally, that's my least preferred option because it's expensive. But that is another option that councils have used.
Thanks,
I
Gav.
should say as well, a fourth one, which has only just recently evolved, and all credit to Steve at Port Adelaide Enfield Council. Their first trial, they went the outsourced path. The learnings for him is he's going to undertake the training to do traffic management planning himself as part of his place activation role. And they've got a very good team of and system of volunteer management. So they're going to tap into their volunteer managers, their volunteers that might like to volunteer to provide traffic support at their future Play Street events.
Thanks, Gav. Good question from Damien in terms of how did the community run it themselves? Erica, what is it? Can you unpack that model? No local government involvement?
Yeah, so there were a few play streets that were selected by council that were already running their own play gatherings, and I guess we've had a lot of conversations about if we should be endorsing this movement, but essentially it's people just getting together and playing outside, or and just it is usually in courts or quiet residential streets. And they may put their bins out and just close the street, but the whole street is involved. We tapped into a few that have been going for more than 10 years, and they run 4 every year, and it's very organised, but it's got nothing to do with the council. And there were some others where the council sort of found out they were happening and thought that would be a good one for the pilot. But when we sort of overlaid the red tape over those neighbourhoods, they were like, whoa, we could do this ourselves. We don't need you. Back off. And so that was really interesting. But there were people, as I said, there was some that they sort of were running over 10 years, so they were really far down that continuum. But I think even through, we had a great one in Western Australia where the woman there, it was a new neighbourhood, so new residential area. And what they found essentially is that going through the process once with a little bit of help from council had this really easy permit system that the next time it was sort of like an hour's time to fill in the permit, and that was it. They could do the traffic management themselves. And so that was a really light touch from council. I think that was a really great example too. Thanks,
Erica. And just further to respond to Damien, I mean, we love the idea that communities connect informally and play. And I know through COVID, that's what a lot of families are doing. They're informally connecting on the street, and that's another example of a play street. And it should be as simple as just wandering out and playing. And we are talking about quiet residential streets, mind you, and safety is paramount always. And so what we're saying to our stakeholders that we want to see a conversation between communities and local government to ensure safe environments, but we also love the idea of informal play and more play for children. Samantha asks, where does child safe environments fit into play streets? And again, that's a really good question, Samantha. Child safe environments, it's essential to play streets because it is all about connecting neighbours together. So we can look after children together as a community. It takes a community to raise a child, or village to raise a child. In terms of the broader safe standards around requiring working with children's checks, it's something that hasn't, I suppose, come up in the context of the system that we've worked through with our trial partners. However, in future, if we do find ourselves working with local government, it's definitely an area that we'd be keen to have a conversation on and unpack as we move down the line. Jennifer Stone, being involved in urban design landscape architecture, streetscapes are underutilised spaces that need to be better designed and developed to allow for community use and function. Verges, pavements, footpaths, everything, and offer more opportunities for design outcomes to better build active, diverse and connected communities. This is a really good point, Jennifer. We love what goes on in Holland and Germany, where you've got the living streets, the Vernerfs, where children, cyclists, pedestrians, and motorists are given equal priority on roads and share these spaces. And we love the idea that infrastructure can be changed to encourage people to gather and encourage people to play as well. So I think there is a real opportunity there. We'd love to be involved in a pilot, just putting it out there.
Kieran, the issue of liability. Gail from Moreton Bay.
Good.
Greetings, Gail, an old friend, has raised. And this is another key issue that Play Australia wants to work on, because as you will see, there are layers upon layers in dealing with street play, and the issues of insurance and the issues of traffic management and state government legislation are issues that we as a national organisation need and want to put in a lot of energy, because they're tricky ones. Every local government has a different view about it, and overwhelmingly, I can say it's outrageous what the community is expected to have to pay in some cases to use what is in fact their own neighbourhood to meet and play. So that's the kind of issue that Play Australia nationally will take up, and at state level.
Barb, we've got a minute to go,
Yep.
And it's really important that we finish on time. I'll have a scan through questions, and I can update the FAQs on our website to make sure that we cover off on everyone's questions. If they're more specific, we can get in contact as well. But all our contact information is on the website, so please get in touch. We better wrap it up, Barb.
Okay, well, before I go, thank you very much, everybody, particularly to Kieran, Gav and Erica, and all of the people who have been involved in this. We look forward to a very prosperous development. Somebody asked, where did the 1000 Streets name came from? It came from our friends in the UK, who actually delivered 1000 play streets in England, I think. I don't think it actually was the UK, was it? It was in England. Keep an eye out for our Series 4, which will be starting in about 5 weeks, when we will be bringing to you presentations around traffic management, transport, walking, cycling. We're going to have a session on maintenance, which is a bit overdue, surfacing for sports, and early years challenges and design futures. So that's it from us. Thank you, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, everyone.